Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. This is episode 426. We've got a great special guest here. Adrian knows him a little bit. It's Adrian's dad, actually. But we've got Tobey with us. So now Paul is a well-known coach, business advisor in Canada and also in the USA. And we're going to be discussing online education. You know, he runs his own courses, but also some deeper topics. So, Paul, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers? You're mute, Paul.
Sure, Jonathan. Thanks for having me on. And the question is it okay if I tell you a little bit about myself? Sure. So I was a professional concert jazz pianist for the majority of my life. And I know that sounds like an odd thing doing what I do these days. But it actually was a good thing because it taught me a lot about what it means to be successful in life. For example, one of my mentors used to say, it only takes two things to be successful in life. One, you have to be emotionally involved. And two, you have to repeat things over and over again until you truly understand them and get measurable results. And when he told me that, I looked back at my music career, which lasted about 22 years. And I got to see a lot of the world. I played in 17 different countries, and I was on a large American record label called Arkadia. And I recorded for them. I made 8 albums. And that came to a screeching halt because there was a bunch of things that happened to me at the age of 41 that most people wouldn't want to go through. There was some health problems. There was some, I don't know if you know what tinnitus is. It's a loud ringing in the ears. Yeah. That's not good for a musician. And Arcadia was struggling at the time because of the aftermath of 9/11. So, because they were, right next to the World Trade Centers. So that was the end of my recording contract, and my wife and I actually went completely broke. Adrian was very young at this time. And we literally had to leave our house. We lost it to the bank, and, a bunch of other things happened. And we ended up sort of living in my parents' spare bedroom for a couple of months until we sort of figured out what to do next. And then I just sort of went on this soul-searching thing that trying to determine what the heck am I going to do with the rest of my life? Because, and things got pretty bad financially because I'm pretty sure, Jonathan, in your audience, business people don't really need a piano player in their business. So even if I had put a resume together, it wouldn't get me very far in the business world. And I didn't have any business experience. So how does one transform into the place that I am now? Well, the answer is that not only did I walk across Spain once to sort of figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, but I also started just relearning. And I picked a different school. I went to a different school than most people go to. I already had a degree in music, and that didn't serve me very well financially. So when I went back to school, I went back to millionaire school. I went back and I learned from people who actually had measurable real-world results and could teach those steps to me one by one. And I took a number of different courses, read a stack of books, and essentially just started my own business 17 years ago. And over the past 17 years, it's turned into not just a full-fledged training company, but a marketing agency. We run a lot of online products. I'm also helping Groundhog with his business, Adrian with his Groundhog business. And what I'd like to say about all of that is, I think, and we talked about this before the call, Brian Clemmer said, if how-tos were enough, we'd all be skinny, rich, and happy. And I can tell you that even though I'm a really, really smart person, I believe, I don't know, I've written like 9 symphonies and performed them with an orchestra. I'm sure I'm not your average, sort of level of intelligence, but that didn't mean a hill of beans when it came to real world financial success. And so how did I turn all that around? And the answer is there was a bunch of things I didn't know yet, and I had to learn what those things are.
Oh, that's a fantastic introduction. and a very open one. Thank you so much, Paul. Adrian, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Adrian. I'm the CEO and founder of Groundhog. If you require any sort of marketing automation in your business, you're looking to do email marketing, you're looking to save yourself a little bit of time in the delivery of your products on your website, or you want to increase the amount that you're able to follow up with prospective leads, then we offer sales and marketing tools that allow you to do that right within your WordPress website. Go to groundhog.io, where you can download our free plugin and start implementing that today.
That's great. And before we go into the main part of the interview, folks, I just want to quickly mention one of our great sponsors, and that is Kinster Hosting. And what Kinster does is they only specialize in WordPress hosting. And what does that mean to you? Well, the speed of your website is really important. It's bless me, listeners and viewers. It's one of the main ways that Google basically measures the effectiveness in SEO terms of your website. And speed of hosting is really important. Kinster uses Google Cloud Hosting, which is some of the best framework hosting you can buy on the market at the present moment. And what do they provide? They provide a really easy UX design interface, and they provide some of the best support on the market, to my belief, on the market at the present moment. All their technicians are highly trained. They're big enough to have all the resources, but still small enough to really care about their customers. If that sounds interesting for you or for your clients, go over to kinster.com. Look what they've got to offer. I'm sure you're going to be totally blown away by their service levels. And if you do sign up, tell them that you heard about them from WP-Tonic. So, Paul, that was a great introduction. So, let's just start off with marketing automation, because we had a quick discussion before the show. I get a feeling that a lot of people think, marketing automation is going to really solve all our problems in this company. What's your been? Do you agree with that? A lot of people think that way, and what's been your experience of that idea that marketing automation is the wonder bullet? You're muted again, Paul. Press that button.
So it tells me to press the space bar temporarily if I want to, and you have to hold it, but that doesn't seem to work. Anyway, so the answer to your question is multifaceted. Let me start with marketing automation.
Well, only my questions are multifaceted.
So do we use it? Yes. Are we considered to be experts in that? Yes. We've been doing it for a very long time. Yes. But various different products, not just Groundhog, but Infusionsoft and ActiveCampaign and a bunch of others. So what we find is with marketing automation is that it will take care of the mundane marketing tasks that you do not have time to do, especially when you're doing for hundreds of people and sometimes thousands of people. It will follow up with them. It will book meetings. It will book consults. But what it won't do is it won't understand how to solve somebody's problem. So what you have to do in our experience is that if you want to solve somebody's problem, you first have to understand what that problem is. You have to have experience in solving it or other problems like it before. You have to come up with a step-by-step solution that solves that problem, either with or without their help. Then you have to back that up with some type of world-class support, because if you just say, here's how, and here are the steps, and here's a document on how to do that, it doesn't mean that they'll be able to follow it and make sense out of it. And then finally, because it may take some time, it may take some investment in terms of dollars and resources, that person sometimes needs to be talked into it. And that is a shift in perspective. Oftentimes we think that if how-tos were enough, we'd all be skinny, rich, and happy, and that's just not the case. Sometimes there is deeper issues. It's like sometimes you have to look within oneself to know, why am I not succeeding? I have all the tools, I have all the automation, I have a great website, I have all of these things, yet I'm not making money. And the answer to that is that, are you truly in service? Are you actually helping people? Do you understand universal law and how that pertains to rolling out a product that actually solves somebody's problems? And if you help enough people get what they want, then you can have what you want. If you're trying to take before you actually help, then that's what's happening in today's entrepreneurial world. Here's my great product, everybody should buy it. Does that product actually solve someone's problem without a lot of other problems being created as a result? Does that make sense?
It certainly does, Paul. Over to Adrian.
So where does can you just there? All right, perfect. Muted the microphone. So you're mentioning that you have to help enough people, or you have to help enough people get what they want before you can have what you want. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So how do you quantify, how does someone quantify that they're actually being able to do that? So someone's probably at home right now and they think they have a great product and they think that they're able to do that. How do they quantify that? Because they're looking at their statistics, they're looking at their numbers, and it's just not adding up. How does someone, do you have a strategy, or is there a test that you can take to say, I'm quantifyingly being able to do this?
So I think the answer is, if you've solved somebody's problem and you know that you've done it, and that person has responded with a, yes, you've solved my problem, thank you so much for helping me, and you've solved it with a step-by-step solution, a product, a service, or whatever it is, then you have a duty and a responsibility to continue to share that with other people, whether you get paid for it or not. Now, I know there's a lot of people that are saying, well, I need to get paid for my stuff. Well, sometimes, not always. Sometimes just the act of giving and helping will have a universal impact on the way the universe kicks back opportunity. And so oftentimes we get stuck in that, well, I need to get paid for my stuff. And that may be true, but there's also some other things that are happening in the background that you may not realize. So I always say this: 99% of the creative process is complete before you see any evidence in your physical reality. And oftentimes we're too much in a hurry to reap the rewards. For example, when do you harvest, Adrian?
Generally, in terms of Groundhog, our main product is absolutely free. So we operate on a freemium model. We offer our whole basically suite of tools that allow you to run almost an entire business without paying a cent. And then only when a business gets to a certain level will they actually come and maybe shell out some dollars in order to get more advanced features or integrate other platforms.
So as someone who's known you for quite some time, I would say you harvest when it's harvest season. And what people in business tend to do is they try to harvest their crops before it's harvest season. And so they look for evidence. I'm sure you have enough common sense to know that you don't plant a seed in your backyard today and you run out tomorrow, rip it out of the ground, and demand to see immediate results. You nurture it, water it, transplant it. You do whatever you can until that plant eventually turns fruit or flowers or whatever the crop it is you're trying to harvest. One of the things that I know about you is that in raising you and working with you for some time, you have patience. You are harvesting when it's harvest season. I know your financials. I know that you're a startup. I know how well you've done, and I know your profitable months and your non-profitable months. What I know is that you're not in a hurry. You're building things methodically. You're also building a product based on constructive feedback, not just from us, but from your clients as well. And you're taking all of that into consideration, and you're not in a hurry. And that's really the point that I'm trying to make. A lot of people are sitting at home going, my product is awesome. It solves the entire world's hunger problem. I don't understand why nobody's buying it. And the answer is because you haven't helped enough people yet in order for it to take on a life of its own. One of the things that I noticed with Groundhog is that the Facebook group is now handling itself. That's an amazing thing. When people start to use a product and they start to experience it, they start to answer each other's questions, freeing up you and a lot of your time to build 2.0 or 3.0 or all the things that you're doing. Does this make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Jonathan?
Oh yeah, I'll just go with the flow. Folks, so Paul, you also do a lot of online training, you know, and we have our kind of three pillars is information for the e-learning entrepreneur, marketing automation, and of course a focus on WordPress. So we have a kind of three areas that we cover on this show, Paul. So you've got a fair bit of experience on online training and education. Can you give some of the things that you've learned, some of the a couple of mistakes you made, which you learned from when you was doing your first online courses or your online training, which you think could the listeners get some value from? What do you think about that?
Well, I started training when there was no such thing as online training. What we would do was, back in the days of Auto-Response Plus version 3 and self-hosted crappy WordPress websites, we used to put out PDFs or some type of e-book platform, and that was the extent of our training. Now we have all kinds of video resources at our disposal. But even though we have all of those things, what I find is people don't really understand two things. The first one is that your content is secondary to the context at which you present it. For example, if you fill a bowl full of water, the water represents content that is being held together by the bowl. But if the bowl springs a tiny little leak, all of the water, which is the content, will leak out. In the context of a presentation, information is boring for the most part. If you think about the way that it's being delivered, if that person, for example, never pauses or asks a question or takes the time to understand how people absorb information, then then the information is just flat out boring and people won't listen to it. Am I making sense?
Oh yeah.
So I help people train on context. For example, I just finished a 3-day, I mean, that's literally like the shortest seminar I give is 16 hours. But I just finished a 3-day seminar where it was 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. for 3 days straight, called Train the Trainer. It's helping people do better presentations at conventions, conferences, when they're invited to be speakers, whatever. I trained almost 1,000 speakers in my career. How did I learn to speak? I have and paid for 9 different public speaking teachers and mentors, and I've learned a lot of the context of the way that information is delivered. So that's one. You can have the best audio equipment, video equipment on the planet, but if you don't know how to connect with people and you don't know how to engage people, then your content will fail, period. Doesn't matter how great the content is, doesn't matter how great the information is. If people can't absorb it and it's not in a step-by-step format and is not engaging, it won't work. 2, in terms of the actual presentation itself, what we've learned is that the best way to present information is in an interactive manner. Don't just put a bunch of videos together and throw them in an online membership site and expect people to consume them. You need automation to follow up with people to see if they're consuming them. But even then, if that information is not interactive, you will lose a significant portion of your audience because generally you haven't activated somebody's natural will to learn. We call that suggestology. So what's it called?
I don't know how to pronounce that.
Suggestology.
I haven't even heard of that word before.
Yeah, so I wrote a whole book about it. It's actually Suggestology, and people can buy it on Amazon if they want to. It's called Suggestology. Just look it up. Oh. It's the art of activating someone's natural will to pay attention and actually learn. And it's a very difficult thing to learn. Typically, our school system does not do this. Our school system is essentially a glorified babysitting service. And teachers aren't taught how to present information. They're taught how to lecture. And if you've ever been to a lecture before, lectures are boring. So, but if you look at the way that we're doing That's Ambitious, and you can go check this out at that'sambitious.com, the information that we put into the membership area is recorded videos of interactive presentations. It's not just a presentation. It's an interactive presentation that was done via live stream. We use Ustream. I built an entire television studio to do this with a video wall, an embedded video wall. And it's very, very professional. I spent a lot of money putting that together, and I believe it's second to none in the live stream sort of e-learning context. And what is it? It's an entire year, every other week, every other Thursday, from 10 a.m. to noon. You come online or you come into our facility in Toronto, and you learn personal and professional development over an entire year, being guided by an individual who went from zero to, I hesitate to say that. It's funny when I say it, but, I'm a self-made millionaire. And, I find most people don't know how to do that. Most people don't know how to go from where they are financially now to being solvent at all. They're looking for just a way to pay the bills and just a way to get by. And that's not what I'm helping people learn. I'm helping people build businesses. I'm helping people understand the context of delivery of information and how people absorb information. And I'm doing it in a very, very, we're doing it in a very, very professional way. So 1 is context, 2 is professional. Everything that you put out must be different. I always make the analogy to this, because I do a lot of training for CEOs, and they need to understand their marketing processes. And one of the things we do is an insight advantage process, the stuff, done by Bob Bloom and those guys. But basically, what does that mean? It means, well, what's your uncommon offering? So if you're just trying to be like somebody else, that's never going to cut it. You have to be individualistic. You have to be unique. You have to be different or uncommon. For example, Jägermeister, which you may have heard of, is for most people not that great in alcohol. In fact, it kind of tastes like lighter fluid. But it's very, very profitable company based on one SKU. How is it profitable? Because it doesn't have to be better. It just has to be different. And so it built a whole following based on how different is it in the marketplace. So when I put out a live stream presentation, the TV studio is different. The video wall is different. The interactive process is different. Everything about it is different, so that and I'm not looking for everybody as an audience. I'm looking for high priority targets who want to engage in a very step-by-step format, personal and professional development. That's not for everybody. I'm not looking for everybody. And I think part of the problem with today's entrepreneurs are they're trying to sell to everybody, and therefore they're selling to no one.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know it's a hard lesson for myself, because I moved from America from a successful retail business, which I started when I was 24, with my American wife. You had enough of English weather. And I became just a general WordPress developer stroke consultant. And then a few years ago, I realized that actually it's easier if you find your niche. And that's how I got into membership and learning management systems. We're going to go for our break, folks. It's been a fascinating discussion so far. It's been really interesting. I had listened to Paul. I did actually know that Adrian was your son, actually, but I can't remember the podcast, but I listened to a previous podcast that you did, and you were an excellent guest, and that's why I asked you on the show, actually, Paul. We're going to go for our break, folks. We'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back. I've been a bit mesmerised by old Paul here. I can tell why the CEOs go for him. I'm going to hand it over to Adrian.
Sure. So in the past, we have, I used to work, for those of you who don't know, I used to work in Paul's digital marketing agency, and I did so for quite some time. And we experienced several failures in terms of actually trying to set up online content that we would be able to actually distribute, called the Training Business Pros membership area. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about it for a moment, simply because this is one of the things that is a real big do not do, because it was just one of those things that it was always like a side project, and we didn't really think it out that well, and therefore it was never really super successful. So maybe Paul, here, if you want to elaborate on a little bit about what I'm talking about, here's something. If you're planning on creating a course and starting a digital learning platform, these are the things that is probably just a great idea to not do, simply because for many of the reasons that were highlighted before the break, it's not different, it wasn't engaging, and all of those things. So why don't we just talk a little bit about that?
So if I get your question, you want me to tell them all the things we did wrong?
Yes.
So the first big challenge that we faced was really finding a learning management system that actually did what we wanted it to do.
Oh, I can help you there, Paul.
So I think the first one, Adrian, if I recall, was Membarium. Is that right?
Yeah. That was the first membership platform.
Yeah. And then the next one?
We tried S2.
And then we tried WP-EP.
Yeah.
And now we're on LearnDash.
Yeah.
Right. So that's 4 different ones. Plus there's a bunch of research on others as well. So I think what I'm trying to say is I think one of the mistakes we made was if you don't know how to do something, trial and error is not always the best answer. I think maybe what we could have done differently was sought out a higher level of expertise in order to guide us in the beginning, and we probably would have saved a lot of time and energy. So that's number one. Number two is I would say we don't need a lot of content to start a membership site. I think a lot of people try to get everything done and automated before they actually launch the project, and then they launch the project and now they're out of money. So they don't have any money.
Charged.
So they don't have any money to advertise. They don't have any money to, marketing usually comes last. My answer to that is market first, deliver later. Now, you must always deliver on your promises, but make sure that the promises you're making up front match what's actually in the membership area. If you're telling them that it's ongoing training, which, for example, that's ambitious it is, have at least an outline of what's coming. I don't actually, it's interesting. I don't prepare for a 2-hour online session until typically the afternoon before that. And all I do is put together the exercises. I don't even need to put together the content, because if I've heard about it, read about it, talked about it, or formed an opinion about it, I don't have the right to teach it. Until I've actually done it and got measurable results from it, then I don't need to do any research. I already know what the steps are, and I can put that together very quickly. It's the exercises and the interaction that matters. So if I were saying, well, what were some of the mistakes that we made in the beginning? It's like we're trying to figure out how to put together an entire program versus putting together one program at a time. The third thing is the interaction between the membership platform itself and the automation. People don't consume information unless you track their response rates and you intervene when they don't consume. Even if they're paying. It's amazing. Lots of people are paying for That's Ambitious programs. They're paying monthly. It's being deducted from their credit cards, yet the show rate is less than 50% per course, even though everybody's paying. So they're not even, and they're being reminded the day before, they're being reminded half an hour before, and they still don't show. So people are busy. And that's one of the things that's that's the, what is it? That's the,
They consume it like they want to.
what was that?
They consume it when they
Yeah, people consume information not when you're ready to give it to them, but when they're ready to consume it. Thank you, Nancy.
It's nice to have people that can tell you the answers, isn't it, Paul? I'm here on my own, so I
have an open concept office, so everybody's sort of listening. Some people are on the phone, some people are doing whatever, but they're sort of listening in.
Right. Also, based on my own experience, Paul, it was linked to what we were discussing in the first half of the show. I find a lot of people new to the e-learning environment, they want to build a course based on their experience. And it was based on your, about the vessel and the water in it, to prove value for their course. They literally want to throw War and Peace into it. It's a 52-week course with 2 hours per module with additional information, and it all has to be developed before we can actually launch the course. And of course it will be all developed. Sometimes it is, but normally it's a bad sign. And when it is all provided, that there's no pre-testing or none of the things that you just outlined to Adrian's question. So there's no even idea that it's even really meeting the need of the target audience. It's educated guessing. They're not fools, they're not idiots, but they're making a lot of guesswork. Is that something that you generally would agree with and you see based on your own experience?
One of the initial things that I did when I transitioned out of the music business is when I went and got training, it was Harv Eker who told me this. He said, he didn't tell it to me personally, he probably told it to 200 other people that were in this session. If you learn something and you can prove a measurable result that is significant in any way, then you actually have a duty and a responsibility to share that with other people. The problem is that at that time I was broke. I couldn't share business information or financial information with people because I didn't have any. And I think a lot of people, they try to jump the queue, if you will, by putting presentations together based on information that they've basically got from other people, not information they've actually implemented. So one of the things you want to avoid is the concept of truly faking it before you make it. I believe in the concept of faking it, but not in that context. You can't fake information. If all you've done is read a book and now you're putting it together in a different format, but you actually haven't learned anything because you don't have a result, then you don't really have the right to teach that. So what was I supposed to do? I have a duty and responsibility to help, but I have nothing to help with. So then I started thinking about, well, what do I actually know? Well, I knew how to get a record contract. I knew how to put a tour together. I knew how to make an album. I knew how to sell an album from the stage. I knew how to package an album. I knew how to get cover work and artwork and whatever. And I knew how to play the piano. So one of the first things I started out with was I started selling sheet music online. So what I would do is I would take public domain sheet music, actually mostly Christmas music, believe it or not, and I'd make jazz versions because that was different than most people would play at their annual Christmas concert. And they would literally download it by the tens of thousands of people. The largest audience I had was actually the Philippines, where everybody plays an instrument. So that was a good audience for me. And then, you can't get rich at $7 a piece of sheet music. So what I did was I started making online piano lessons. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about a considerable effort to put together 10 piano lessons, an hour to an hour and a half a piece, that could actually take people from the level that they're at to a level of improvisation. And improv on piano, there's rules to follow. It's not just winging it. But I didn't do that. What did I do? I put up a web page on my website that said this. I said, learn to improvise in 10 weeks or less, guaranteed. Lessons by professional concert jazz pianist Paul Tobey. And then in big red letters, it said, coming soon. And I put a little box there and I said, if you want these lessons, you show some interest, you give me your email address and your name, and I'll let you know when they're ready. I didn't even start making those lessons until there was 500 people on the list.
Yeah, well, so many people don't do that. But, some people they've got a brand name, they've got a recognition in their target audience. So But if you haven't got that, you know, you really want to listen to what Paul's just said, because it is rather important. I'm going to put it over to Adrian.
Just to continue on that conversation quickly, because a lot of people think build it and they will come. And a lot of times that's really just not the case. Just because you build something doesn't mean people know that it's there. They don't know, you know, your story. They don't know the value that you're providing. Even if you have a brand and you have a following, just because you have those things and you put together a product that nobody asked for doesn't necessarily mean that your following will go and buy it. So I think there's more. I know that there's more to there's a little bit left off after the put in your email address and I'll let you know about it. So I just want Paul to finish that story, because I think the follow-up after that is really, or at least the rest of the story is important, especially if you're currently in the process of planning and putting your information together and collecting an audience, or if you haven't started collecting an audience for whatever product you're going to put out there. This is you definitely need to listen to the rest of the story in order to see, here are the steps that I can follow almost to the letter in order to make sure that I don't go out and spend $10,000 putting all of this information together and then I don't get my $10,000 back in return.
I think that's great, but I think we're going to leave that for the bonus content, because we really got to wrap up the podcast part of the show. Hopefully you can stay on for another 10 minutes, which we call our bonus content, which people can view on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. If you want to see bonus content, or you want to see our interviews the earliest, we normally place them on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel before we actually release them as podcasts. So go over there and subscribe. Paul, I've really enjoyed the interview so far, but if people want to find out more about you and what you're up to, what's the best online resources for them to go to get that information?
That'sambitious.com.
Oh, that's simple. If only it was so simple for so many of our guests. Adrian, how can people find out more about you and Groundhog?
So if you've been listening to this, would you mind just muting your microphone, Paul? Thank you. So if you've been listening to this podcast, and we've been talking a lot about marketing automation and how that ties in with the learning experience, if you'd like to find out more about how you can utilize that to increase engagement with your students, increase the number of students that you have, then you can head on over to groundhog.io to learn more about the marketing automation solutions that we provide. You can install them directly into your WordPress website and hopefully be able to start utilizing that in order to grow your business.
That's great. And if you're looking to build a learning management system or become an e-learning entrepreneur, come to the WP-Tonic website. We've got a ton of information that's all free. Plus, we can help you get set up on WordPress, on one of the leading learning management WordPress systems, can get you up and running dramatically quicker than you doing it yourself. And we have a number of packages that help you do that. So if that sounds interesting, and also you can book a free half-hour consultation with me. I'm pretty easy to get hold of. Like I say, we'll be back next week with a similar, hopefully a great guest like Paul, providing insight and information to make your learning management, your e-learning journey fulfilling and profitable. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye. Sorry about that, Paul, but I like to keep it to half hour for the podcast. So can you answer Adrian's question?
And I think before you actually jump into that, provide some context onto actually what this training was, because I don't think we mentioned that it was not online.
Right. So the story goes like this. I was reading a book by Joe Vitale one day, and he said, you're not going to get very far with products that are $5, $7, $9. Come up with something that is $500 or $1,000, because it takes a lot less of those things to actually make money than selling low cost. I think that makes sense. So what I did was I thought, well, what could I do to actually come up with a product like that? And I thought, a lot of people in music want to be able to improvise. They want to sit down at a piano or whatever instrument and just play without the aid of sheet music. So I thought, okay, well, I'll teach them lessons, but I can't do that one by one because I don't have time for that, and that's not the one-on-many strategy. So I thought, okay, I'll package up video piano lessons. But at the time, equipment wasn't the way it is today, where it was a lot more expensive. You needed to hire a crew, whatever. So I thought, instead of doing that, I'll just throw up a web page, like I said, learn to improvise, guaranteed, coming soon. Give me your email address and I'll let you know when it's ready. So what happened was I started getting all of these email addresses coming in. Now, one of the things I didn't mention was I've always been good at SEO. In fact, it's one of the things that companies hire me to do. And I've had a lot of significant wins over the years. At that time, if you looked up the words piano music, I was ranked top 3 in the entire world on Google. So that brought well over 1 million unique visitors a month from all corners of the planet. So it wasn't that hard to sort of direct them to this page and say, if you want to learn how to improvise, give me your email address and we'll let you know. What I did do with that list as it started building was I sent them an email right back, manually, by the way, not automatically, because you couldn't do that. It said, thank you for, we'll let you know when the lessons are ready. What would you like to see in the lessons? So rather than me thinking about what would go into them, because I had my own ideas about what that is, people would say, I would like to see more about blues progressions, or I would like to see more about harmony and linear modality and all of these different types of things, because obviously you'd have to be a player in order to understand this. So I took all of that advice and I parsed it all, and I started making the piano lessons as soon as there was 500 people on the list. It took a long time. I fired the first editors because I'd be describing something, and even though there was an overhead camera on the piano keys, I was like, this is the voicing that you do with your fingers, right? Put your fingers in this position on the piano. The camera would be on my face. The editor completely missed those sort of normal cues. So I got myself Adobe Premiere and learned how to edit my own video. And it took a long time to learn how to do that. It took a long time to match all the 5 different cameras to one final presentation. By the time I finished and got it online, it was 6 months. By that time, there was 3,300 people on the list. So I fired off a simple email on my way to a Tony Robbins seminar. It basically said this: thanks for waiting. I know you've been waiting a while. Instead of the $497 fee that we're going to charge for these 10 lessons, you pay half of that, $247, and we'll give you every piece of sheet music in the online store for free. I sent that email out 15 seconds later, cha-ching, 30 seconds later, cha-ching, 1 minute later, cha-ching, and throughout the entire weekend at a Tony Robbins seminar, I'm high-fiving my wife, and we're celebrating every little $247 sale. I made approximately, I don't remember exactly, almost $27,000, I think, in 48 hours. That shows 2 things. Number one, it shows the power of a marketing list and a targeted mailing list. And 2, it demonstrates the opposite of what most people do. Build a solid program and then go market it. What we did was we marketed it first, built interest, and then made the program.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. Thanks for that. I think, like I've learned, is that, but in some ways, it's obviously you had that audience. You admitted that you were good at SEO and you had a lot of traffic to the website, so you had an audience there. How did you get into SEO, actually? What drove you to learn that? Was it just the need, basically?
I'd never even actually heard the word until I was hired, because I built my own websites in the music business, and I was hired by some guy in England to put out a DVD of the month club. And I kept asking this guy, how are people going to find this new website and buy your DVD of the month? And he kept telling me, he said, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. It'll just catch on like wildfire. And when it came time to launch, he had put up his entire house to build all of this wonderful content. It was really, really well done, called, guy's name was Terry Malloy. The product, I can't remember the name of the product now. We're going back 20 years. Anyway, when it came out, so when it came out, nobody bought it.
You got cricket.
Yeah, it was crickets. There was nobody to the website, and the guy lost his shirt. He lost his house to the bank, and blah blah blah. And he was a banker, so that that's even worse. And I went out.
Some people would disagree with you there, but there we go.
Well, I went out, and I try to save people. So I tried to save this thing, partially because he didn't pay me, so that was one of the issues. And I went to the competitor's website, and I saw down in the bottom right-hand corner of one page it said affiliates. So I clicked on it. I didn't know what that was, and it listed affiliates. And there was a guy at the top of the list. His name is, I'll never forget. His name was Tony and Dominico, and he was an affiliate out of Australia. So, and it put his phone number. And so I just picked up the phone and I called him. And I said, hi, this is, he answers the phone. And I said, hi, this is Paul Tobey. I'm calling from Canada. I noticed that you're an affiliate for Spiritual Cinema Circle. We have a competition product. Would you like to become an affiliate for us? And this is what he said. He goes, hi, mate. Do you know what time it is?
Oh, God, you had run him up.
I'd woken him up in the middle of the night. And I go, oh man, listen, I was so excited to speak with you. I'm so sorry. Let's, he's like, call me back in the morning. Okay, mate. And I'm like, okay. So I called him back in the morning, and he was my first foray into what was known as SEO. It's not SEO anymore. It's UXO, which is a much different science. But back then it was fairly easy. And I picked up those concepts very quickly. Because nobody in the piano business was doing that. Nobody in the sheet music business really even understood what that was, and how Google actually, how the algorithm actually worked. It's been modified a lot over the years, but at that time it was fairly simple to understand. And I traded that instruction for music. I would give him original music for his various online properties, for his videos and things like that he was doing. And so I got a lot of guidance and initial instruction about online marketing from that guy. And then I started, I met Matt Wilkie and Kevin Gill. I met Willie Jarvis, a lot of the original guys, Joe Vitale, the original sort of online marketers, Derek Gell, and who's the guy that killed himself in a car accident. Anyway, a lot of these guys, I would take their online courses. I was a bit of a learn-it-all because I was in a hurry to fend for my family, right? I wasn't making any money in the music business now because of all these health issues. So I had to figure out another way, and I just became this sort of learn-it-all. And I've kept up on it, actually. Even now, like a lot of my clients, like this is going to sound odd, but you would think that $3,500 a month, every month, to optimize one new keyword phrase a month seems like a lot of money, correct?
Well, it just depends on the return, doesn't it? Really, doesn't it?
But
Paul?
that's what I charge, and people pay it. And I've had a lot of significant wins for that because, and some statistics came out yesterday. I should share them with you. But the number one organic search listing still, even with the ads on top of it, still gets a 31% click-through rate. So, and it drops in half every space under that. So 2 is like 15, 3 is half of that. I mean, if you're not 1, 2, or 3, forget it. You're nowhere. Like even 5, as soon as you get below 5, you're not even on the front page anymore. So now it's even less. So my clients, they don't want it to be front page. They want to be 1, 2, or 3, and that's my job. And typically, I'm pretty good at that. I understand how the new algo works. It's not a walk in the park. It does take significant time, but there are elements at play that that prove themselves over and over again, mostly because of user experience, right? Time on page, scroll rate, things like that. So, yeah.
I'll just go on kind of before we wrap it up, Paul, because I don't want to take too much of your time up. Things only get more competitive year in and year out. The e-learning, the actual e-learning industry still seems to be growing. People are still, from institutions to coaches to private individual, all sorts of individuals seem to be interested in running courses online. Do you still think there's potential for success in this area, and do you think it's still growing to some extent?
There's always potential. The challenge is, like I said, do you actually have real world measurable results that you can share with people? And do you know how to share those results? Does that make sense? So
yeah.
When we talked about context earlier, do you understand the context of what actually makes an engaging presentation? So those two things, plus I would say a lot of people are looking to dig that seed out of the ground before it's time. They're trying to harvest before harvest season. So patience is an important element. I personally, why do I do That's Ambitious program? Because it's the only time I have left. We're busy in the agency. I'm busy with my executive consulting business. And it was the only way to reach an audience with the time I had left. So it's 2 hours every other week. What many people are trying to do is they're trying to make it their primary business. For me, it's just a way to help with the time I've got left. So it's a little bit different from that perspective. So if you're trying to make your entire business a learning platform, then you're in a pretty solid competition for people's attention and interest. So it better be not only different, it better be first class. And if you're not willing to invest in that first class element, then it's going to be a tough go, because guys like me will be fighting for people's attention, just like other thought leaders. And, does that answer your question?
It certainly does. Right, we're going to wrap up the show. Thank you so much, Paul, for coming on. You have to come back. I've really enjoyed the discussion. I think we've covered a very broad area, and hopefully the listeners and viewers have enjoyed it. We'll be back next week, folks. Bye.